Hello everybody, it's the Historical Gamer once again, and today we're returning to Strategic Command, World War II, World at War. It is August of 1942, the German drive on Moscow and Stalingrad continues unabated, as well as a slightly lesser drive on Leningrad. I wouldn't be surprised if Stalingrad falls this turn. If it doesn't fall this turn, it'll probably fall next. But again, the goal here is to mainly keep delaying the Germans so that they're forced to fight through another winter in Russia when they get a lot of penalties, and maybe that gives us some time to rebuild our forces in Russia. We probably have a good 3 turns more until we get to the winter. After I hit end turn, it's going to be the end of August. Our next turn will be in September. The Germans will have a turn in September, and then October as well. Now, I'm hoping that the mud and weather and other things like that start to slow them down here, start to negate the effect of their air force and whatnot, but that remains to be seen. 3 to 4 more turns might be asking a lot to hold out in Moscow, but we might be able to do it. We'll have to see. Meanwhile, in Spain, the Allies have begun the invasion of Europe early. We have Madrid surrounded. Remember, the Spanish fascists joined the Nazis. We have taken the secondary capital of Burgos. We've driven to the French border. We have destroyed 2 German armored units here in the Zaragoza pocket. We have a 3rd surrounded and probably to be destroyed next turn. We've taken Cadiz. We just landed an American and a British headquarters unit here to help start improving the supply situation there, and that's where we're at right now. With that being said, let's go ahead and turn and see what the end of the month brings us. French partisans are disrupting supplies in France, so that's good for us. Means that they don't have Nancy adequately garrisoned. Hey there, Brass Monkey. Battle Blast as well. Axis raiders are interrupting our convoy routes between Egypt and the UK, as well as others. With the importance of Madagascar, with the Japanese presence in the Dutch East Indies, it is imperative that Madagascar does not fall into enemy hands. Such an eventuality could see us denied the use of the Indian Ocean, with all political, logistical, and economic implications this would have. Send an expedition to seize Madagascar and prevent its use as an Axis base. Okay, so I guess we have to send an expedition. Good news also, the British just developed armor level 3, so that should help our tank battles against the Germans once we get our tanks upgraded to level 3. American heavy bombers of level 2. That might be ahead of the Germans, I'm not quite sure. I know we're still benefiting from some early war research that we really focused heavily on, but I'm not sure that'll keep up. I think the Germans have a lot more resources devoted toward tech at this point. German subs going after an American heavy cruiser here off the coast of Portugal, as well as some Canadian destroyers that they're trying to attack. Apparently that light cruiser, is very resistant to German attack. Meanwhile, we could probably focus our carriers there against their submarines here, since at least 3 of them are stuck in their current positions, so we can conduct some robust anti-submarine warfare there, maybe do a little bit of damage to the German Navy, maybe cause the AI to divert some resources in to counter the naval effects. Meanwhile, remember, Japan landed heavy marine forces to the west of Pakoi, here on the western border of China near Indochina. Yeah, we'll see whether Spain joining the war is a good thing or a bad thing for us. We do see Germany now has invested in strategic bombers there as they continue to pound Leningrad. Japanese bombers are hitting a couple of bases in the rear. Also, their tactical bombers just destroyed a garrison unit there. German tactical bombers apparently are still able to bomb without any fear of the weather at this point. It looks like it's not raining yet. I had hoped that the muddy season would start, but not quite yet. The good thing is the Russians do have a fair amount of fighters to act as interceptors here in the Moscow theater. We don't really have much outside of the Moscow front. Meanwhile, on the Stalingrad front, heavy tactical air on some of the units to the northwest of the city. Northwest of the city. Jesus, the rocket artillery is powerful. They just did some serious damage to that Soviet army there to the west of Vichy Volchok. I'm curious to see how aggressive the German attacks are. They just destroyed our infantry to the south of Stalingrad. They also just drove in toward Verzhaya and destroyed our forces there, breaking a big hole in the center of our line here in Russia now. a huge gap that we can't really do anything about. And the only thing we really have to hope against there is that the weather will slow them down. The whole center of the sort of south of Moscow, that central portion of Russia, just got ripped wide open. Meanwhile, the Germans are now driving on Leningrad, successfully driving back this core here to the east of Leningrad, nearly destroying it. They're also driving on Grozny. They're nearly destroying the garrison in Grozny into the deep heart of the Caucasus. They're pivoting south of Moscow, a substantial number of troops pivoting south of Moscow there to try and potentially flank the position there. British forces are now in action in China. Actually, I think they're Indian forces, but Commonwealth forces in any event. Japanese forces trying to break out of the beachhead at Kotobaru. They have not yet gone after Singapore. The interesting thing is, as well as the war is going for the Germans, the Japanese have not had the same success. They're struggling. They've been driven back in China, although I think they're not far from a complete breakout in China. Meanwhile, German heavy tanks there just destroyed a British unit in Spain. That fucking sucks. Heavy Japanese attacks in China. Tactical air as well just wiped out a Russian corps here. So the north of the line is being ripped wide open. The sort of center south of the line is being ripped wide open. Stalingrad didn't fall yet, but it probably will fall, if not in the end of this turn, then next turn. Dear God, there's so many German troops. They didn't really make much progress around Moscow. It seems like they sort of shifted their focus away from Moscow. So that's good, at least. Japanese troops in the south trying to drive on Henyang. They did a fair bit of damage to the Chinese forces near Nanning. 3rd Panzer Heavies are suffering attrition damage. It means they're very low on supplies. 2nd SNLF force at Kotobaru also suffering attrition. That's good news for us. Soviet morale falls with the loss of Vorzhena. Or Vornozen. I'm not sure. 224 fighter group forms in India, as well as some armor forming in India. That's good for us. Partisans disrupting supply in Nancy. Communist partisans doing work. Churchill accuses Gandhi of being in the service of Japan. Fuck you, Churchill. Come on, man. The Red Orchestra espionage group is broken up in Berlin. I don't know if that has any impact at all on the game, but it's a thing. Hey there, Idle. Idle Germ. All right, so that was a rough turn. The Yan'an was damaged from bombing as well as Leningrad. 8th Chinese garrison destroyed, 11th Soviet Corps destroyed, 12th Soviet Corps destroyed, 13th Soviet Corps destroyed, 10th Soviet Army destroyed, 2nd British Corps destroyed, 3rd Soviet Army destroyed. It was both a rough and not a decisive turn. My mouse is kind of acting up here. We're getting a lot of intel from the Soviets, at least. Stalingrad's totally going to fall next turn. All right, so a couple of British garrisons, which I did build just in the hope that in the event that the Germans did decide to go ahead and land in England, that we have a response. I don't think it's likely they're going to launch Operation Sea Lion anytime soon. Meanwhile, we have a Soviet headquarters here. 1st U.S. Rangers are ready. We'll deploy them to the East Coast. 14th Indian Army is also here. We'll deploy them near China. I think China may be saved by a massive influx of British forces, or British and Indian forces. That's the hope anyway. Nice. This is good news, actually. So I just interposed myself between these two Japanese marine formations. They're very strong marine formations, and they may well drive back this Chinese corps, but we just did serious damage to them by cutting them off from their headquarters unit. So these guys don't have a port. They have no supply. Pakoi is the only port they have to bring in supply. And now their headquarters unit and their source of supply is separated from 2 Japanese Marine formations. So that should be very useful. Meanwhile, I'm going to go ahead and deploy these special forces north near Chongqing. That's where the Japanese seem to be breaking out a little bit. We'll send both these special forces units north. We'll go ahead and slowly move this Indian headquarters unit across the mountains here. You can see here most of our forces, most of our British forces in China are Indian forces. Meanwhile, in the south here, we've got a British headquarters unit trying to move down from Bangkok to provide supply to our troops here near Kota Bharu. Most of our troops are very low on supply. That's the problem here, is I can't even reinforce some of these guys. The good news is the Japanese are low on supply because Johor Bahru is a bad depot. Wow! They have 0 supply, and yet they're not losing much in the way of casualties. That's interesting. I guess the hope is keep the pressure up and maybe attrit him out of existence. They had attrition damage last time, so maybe we can get a little bit more there as we move more British forces down there. At least it feels like Singapore is safe for the moment. Meanwhile, one other thing I think we should do is the game basically told us to go land in... Do we have troops in Peshawar? We don't. The game basically told us to go land in Madagascar. Promise, most of my garrisons are kind of needed where they're at. I guess the troops at Rangoon could be thrown on... do they need to be amphibious or can they transport there? This area is neutral. Okay. So I really need them to be on long-range transports, but I don't have that ability. Do you have any troops left over here in Eastern Africa? Nope. Damn it. I mean, I need to send something down that way. So I guess we'll send the paratroopers here from Rangoon. We'll send them on amphibious transports, not long range, but just something. Alright, we'll wait for these guys to run out of supply. They should start to attrit before too long. These Chinese forces are going to receive reinforcements here. These Japanese forces are in rough supply, actually. These British troops' readiness is poor, but the supply situation is good. We'll swap that garrison out for that corps, and we'll attack that headquarters. Yeah! We just destroyed a Japanese headquarters unit in China! That's a big loss for them. Alright, can we upgrade these guys for anti-air? No, but we can give them infantry weapons, so that's good. I'm gonna... Looks like Yichang's gonna fall. We probably need to fall back. I really want to get these guys out of here, but I can't. So we'll just have to spend almost all of our reinforcement points on them. Meanwhile, in the north, the Chinese troops continue to attack and drive a wedge into this northern advance by 2 Japanese armies. Move these guys out of Xi'an. We'll move these guys in. Defensive artillery here. The communists are attacking, doing some pretty big damage here to this Japanese army here. 3rd Japanese army suffering some pretty heavy casualties. We'll continue to try and hold the line here near Yichang. We will fall back just slightly. So these guys are in to 3 out of 4. These are 2 out of 3. Actually, if we fall back, that probably would be a bad idea. We've also got British Special Forces units coming up, which should help. Or India. I keep calling them British. I really should be fair. I should call them Indian, because that's what they are. Okay, doing a little bit of damage there. I don't have any more reinforcement points, so I'm just going to kind of keep those guys where they are. Okay, so that's the Chinese front. We've already spent our reinforcement money there. I could launch attacks here. Nice. We drove those guys back. Well, in that case, I think we just hold on then. I didn't actually do a ton of damage to that Marine unit, but I did drive him back, so that was a good result. These guys are down to 3 strength. I'd rather not have a headquarters unit taking the brunt of the attack, but I don't have another unit to shift in there. I don't have money to reinforce these guys. I don't want them to just die. So we'll leave this headquarters unit here. Stillwell. Hopefully he doesn't get destroyed. Alright. So that's the good news. Meanwhile, they haven't really made a serious drive on Port Moresby yet. We're still hanging strong there. I can't get my my Australian forces up to full strength. I could try and... there's no real point to counterattacking in New Guinea, though. It's not really worth anything. We'll reinforce this armor, though. I'm going to save the bulk of my British points for operations in Europe, though. So we'll just kind of leave those guys as is. I want to make sure I don't forget about the Americans here. So these guys all already reinforced last turn. So I'm going to pull these naval assets out, which we just upgraded after fighting a series of intense battles in the Pacific. We're going to go ahead and put these damaged vessels into port here. We also have an escort carrier arriving. Now, the one thing I was mistaken with is our escort. I think our escort carrier doesn't have the ability... well, actually, it says strike/escort. Is that the same as on the carriers? No, that just says strikes. Huh. Well, they only have 1 air wing. I'm not sure if they can attack. Set mode. Oh, yeah, they can attack. Fighter or naval attacker mix. Okay. So we'll move our first escort carrier, which has arrived here to join the fray. So the first new carrier that we've built, I believe. And so the American fleet is resting and recuperating. Next turn, we're going to upgrade these 4 units here, replace our air wings, and then we'll get ready to kind of push further into the Pacific here. Maybe we even want to upgrade these Marines here, and we could try and do an amphibious attack or something. I'm just a little uneasy about leaving, you know, Hawaii completely unguarded. But we actually have 2 Marine units here. We've got one in... on one Hawaiian island, one on another. We've got one at Hilo, we've got one at Honolulu. So we actually have 2 different Marine divisions. We could try and land some at Tarawa or at Kwajalein and start the counterattack against the Japanese. We don't really have to go for those islands. We could, in theory, drive on Japan itself. But I'd be more interested in luring what's left of the Japanese Navy out. They had like 30 naval units. We destroyed a good deal. They're down to 14. Meanwhile, the American Navy is at 19. Now, a big chunk of that American fleet is in the Atlantic. But at least right here we have concentrated 3, 4, 5, 6 battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, 3 fleet carriers, 1 escort carrier, and a destroyer. So that's a pretty formidable fleet. I think the Japanese might have like 2 carriers left, maybe 3, but we'll have 3, and we'll have an escort carrier as well. And then we have the 6 battleships. So 6, 9, well, 3, 5, 7... 9, 11, 13 ships. This is almost the size of the Japanese Navy right here. And so if we move in a consolidated body against them, I don't think they can withstand us. Also, we do have other units out this way. Some Australian heavy cruisers here. Some Australian light cruisers out this way. We do have some pretty, substantial naval vessels. We've got some New Zealand light cruisers down over here. So, I mean, we do have some substantial naval assets in the Pacific. I really think the Pacific War is going very well. The concern is Russia. The concern is the Eastern Front, not the Pacific Front at this point in time. Okay, so the German armor's moved. Holy crap, 5-1? Really? These guys have 1 hit point left? I mean, they're going to die. They've completely outflanked us over here. We'll reinforce these troops. Yeah, they've basically blown a hole in our northern front. Move this air unit back. Leningrad will fall, but that's kind of a secondary importance at the moment. I'm trying to keep these guys in their positions as much as we can. I'm hoping these guys finish up their construction of a fort down there pretty soon. Oh, 1-3. Move these guys out here. These guys are digging in at Moscow, so we'll shift these over. We'll also see if we can go ahead and place some new Soviet units. So we've got a core here we can place right here at Rezev. Again, frontline placement's probably not ideal. That was actually really stupid. Their readiness is 50, their morale is 50. They will die fast. All right, so we'll move them south. So we've got a little bit of a solid line here. It's a double line, so again, these fortifications up here in the north probably will prevent any likely breakthrough anytime soon. These troops can upgrade their infantry weapons. I'm not going to attack where I don't have to. I'd like to pull these mechanized forces back and use them more selectively on counterattacks where it makes sense. They're dug in at level 3. These guys are dug in at level 2. These guys aren't dug in at all because... But hey, if we can do a little bit of damage here, they're light tanks. They're probably not going to do a whole lot of damage in the first place. I should have bombed them first before I... But any damage I can do, any expense I can force on the Germans, the better. Meanwhile, so that's the situation there. Our front line is completely ripped open. I'll put one army unit here to try and block the road toward Kuybyshev, which is sort of our alternative capital. Once Moscow falls, this may buy us a day before Saratov falls. Reinforce these troops in the south. Meanwhile, Stalingrad is entrenched, but they're not going to survive long. I guess we could eat a couple of German attacks by placing sort of these garrisons here in the way of the Germans near Stalingrad. Maybe that'll buy us another turn with Stalingrad if they use 3 or 4 attacks here on the 2 garrisons that are blocking their way, but they'll probably just die. But again, if this armor unit uses 2 of its attacks against this garrison to finish it off, then great, good for us. Grozny needs to reinforce, so that's, again, a diversion of German forces. They'll destroy Grozny this turn, but maybe they won't get to Baku, which is a national morale center. We'll see. Other new units here. We've got another corps, which I think we can place... Where can I place it that it'll actually be, like, dug in and in the way? I mean, we could place it in the south, too. Apparently I can't place it in Baku. Oh, well, they've already cut the supply line to Baku. They've gotten on this railway here, which then cuts us off from reinforcing any troops in the south. So that oil is cut off, although the way the economy works, I don't think that actually has an impact. Yeah, I'm not sure where to put this. I guess we can put it in Ryazan, or we could put it north of Moscow here, in the event they try and move around and flank us there. Saratov? Yeah, maybe that would have been smarter. It'll delay the drive in Kuybyshev, but I already placed it, so... Alright, so that's all we're going to do with the Soviets at this time. We are going to go ahead and we might as well spend the Soviet money now as well. The army... We get cheap armies here because they were destroyed, so we can buy 2 cheap armies at 165. That leaves us with 124 left. We can also go ahead and buy some cheap special forces there too. I find special forces more useful than corps or garrisons. So with 2 new armies and a special forces unit, those guys will be ready in November. We'll have another army coming in October. So we've got reinforcements on the way. Not a ton of them, but we've got some on the way. How long will Stalingrad last? Probably, well, it'll either die this turn or it'll die next turn. It just depends on if these garrisons do anything. I mean, they'll eat some attacks. Either they'll eat some air attacks or they'll eat one of the armored attacks. I don't think Stalingrad will last long. It is dug in level 4. It is behind rivers, so that should help. The armor that can avoid the river to the south is, again, going to have to attack through this garrison unit unless their air power destroys it first. I think a lot depends on the weather. If it starts raining before their next turn, then the muds may slow them down, and it may lessen the effectiveness of their attack, and then they'll have to use more ground attacks versus land attacks. If the weather is good for them, Stalingrad could fall next turn. If the weather is bad for them, Stalingrad could last maybe 2 turns. So either falling at the end of September or at the end of October would be my guess. Meanwhile, if we move back to Spain, we can see these German armored units have 0 supply, so they're completely cut off. The troops in Madrid, meanwhile, have 1 supply. We can attack this armor here, 2-1. You know what I probably should have done is use my attack air. There are Spanish interceptors, but we have escorts as well. The Spanish air isn't all that upgraded. You can see there we nearly destroyed the armor. And we can go ahead and finish him off here. Should finish the armored unit off. Got him. There goes that German heavy tank unit. We can move these guys. They already attacked, so I can't upgrade them, but we can move them into Zaragoza to sort of solidify the north. We can move some of our infantry south here to try and deal with the enemy fighters in Murcia. We'll see here if we want to... What do we have to do here? We've got enemy subs around here, so let's actually... Well, let's focus on Spain first. Let's use our heavy bombers here to flatten Madrid, or at least lessen their supplies or reduce their effectiveness. Germany's going to lose a little bit of economic output by flattening Madrid as well with their strategic bombers. We now see about using fighters to strafe them, although it doesn't look like that'll be good for more good results. 1-1. That looks like the situation. These guys have 7, so still 1-1. So we'll go with the special forces attack first. Then the mechanized troops can attack 1-3 because we reduced their entrenchment. Nice! And then the Americans can move into Madrid here and take the capital. So Madrid has fallen. That means Spain should surrender next turn, I believe, which should knock all of these Spanish forces out and allow us to begin moving into France to liberate France. We'll move the British headquarters unit up a little bit. We'll move this British army up. We'll move this British headquarters unit up to Bilbao. And we'll move these guys up to Bordeaux. Okay. So we do need to be mindful of partisans, but I am bringing in some transports with some garrison units to help deal... Ah! I don't know why my mouse is acting up. But in any event, we'll move these transports up. We'll unload them at Barcelona. Although we should probably make sure there's no enemy subs in the way. We did find the enemy submarines. Actually, it's good that they're in port. I'm wondering if I can hit them now. Okay, let's see if we can move up and hit these guys effectively in port. I wonder if they can dive when they're in port. Doesn't look like that's a good result. Can we torpedo them in port? No. Okay. So that's completely ineffective. Great. My destroyers can't really hurt them in port either. Well, in any event, if they're in port, then our convoys are safe. So we'll go ahead and get these garrisons over to Spain. We'll send these guys into Barcelona. I don't think they can unload. Oh, they can. And then we'll have to move them to deal with the partisans. Partisans are safe for now. We've got troops adjacent to all the relevant locations. American mechanized, American army. We can move these guys up here. Now, the real challenge is going to be trying to move toward Bordeaux with only a front of 1 or 2. That's going to be a problem. We'll reinforce this mechanized force to full strength. Reinforce these Portuguese troops as well. British troops need reinforcements also. So we got 1 garrison ashore at Barcelona. We'll try and send the other one into Valencia if it can make it there. god, my mouse is just like catching and lagging and freezing, and it's really annoying. All right, so that garrison unit will unload at Valencia. We'll move them to Madrid. So eventually we've got 2 British garrison units coming in from Africa. We'll drop 1 at Madrid. We'll drop 1, I guess, at Zaragoza. And then we'll probably leave 1 unit behind to stick between Salamanca and Burgos. And that should be all we need to do to keep Spain under control. We could even bring one of the new garrison units that we just raised in England to help make sure there's no chance of an invasion. We could bring one of them south as well. In any event, the fall of Spain will be good for us. So yeah, and that'll reopen Gibraltar, which will be very useful for us as well. It'll free up a bunch of destroyers we can use for anti-submarine warfare. Speaking of anti-submarine warfare, let's get to that. There are German subs at sea here. We'll go ahead and hit these guys. These are subs level 2. We've got our... Oh, come on. Really? Can we do anything against these subs? That one was advanced sub level 2. The other one we just attacked was level 1. We've got this carrier here that can move forward here. We'll go after the sub that's weaker. Just did 2 hit point damage. 1 hit point damage. Those good results. This carrier will move up here. We'll switch it over to naval attack. Move this British carrier here, the Glorious, up here to finish off this guy. He dives, and he gets away. Got him. Okay, so we just sank a German sub. We used all of the attacks for these 2 carriers up. Probably want to move them into port to get safe from enemy attacks. Not because they're actually safe, because they're not. But the game doesn't like to attack ships in port, so yeah. All right, so we know there's that level 2 sub in the area, but generally speaking, we're safe-ish. We know there may be some additional subs down to the south or some intelligence of further subs, but 1 more sub lost for the Germans is good news. Reduces their navy to 17. Japanese fleet is at 14. If we take a look at graphs and we look at MPPs, we can see here that the British so far this turn have lost less than they receive in income. The Germans, meanwhile, have almost lost what they receive in income. Their income keeps ticking up, although I'm hoping the fall of Spain will cut into that a little bit. If we look at their national morale, it's at 112. Maybe that'll be hurt a little bit by the fall of Spain also. We'll see. Okay. So we'll reinforce these American units. I mean, I'm going to try and reinforce or upgrade most of the units that I can. Okay. I'm not really sure. I guess we can spend a little bit of money reinforcing these guys. Also, we should plunder the Spanish treasury, which should help as well. I don't know what's going on. I may have to cut this stream short. I'm not sure what's going on with my mouse and why it's all jumpy and all over the fucking place. All right. I'm also curious to see if Vichy France joins the war soon. We've left some troops behind to deal with that potentiality, although we've also got troops that are, that we're trying to... Oh my god, this is so infuriating. That we're trying to get back into Europe to help against the Spanish. So it's sort of a dilemma of whether we want to send these guys to Europe or whether we want them to hang behind and help against Vichy in the event that they join the war. So I'm not sure what to do there. The Americans, I don't think we have any units we can actually move. Oh, we do have a garrison unit we can move. Awesome! So this American garrison unit will allow us to not need to leave anyone behind. Oh god, they're gonna die. They're going to die from subs. I don't have any islands I can park them in. I can't quite get them to Punta del Gaia. I could move them. Oh my god, this mouse. You move to St. John's. That's more south than it is east, though. It's a little bit east. But also move them to Bermuda. Kind of park them in Bermuda, and then we can try and make it from port to port, and then that would allow us to move into Spain without too much trouble. Meanwhile, we have now entered France. We're just south of Bordeaux, and so that's good news for the liberation of France, although, again, I think we're a ways away from breaking out there. The Germans just have to throw 4 or 5 units here between us and them, and kind of that'll axe a lot of what we can potentially do. Move these air units up here to hopefully provide some air cover. Move some of these fighter units over here to, again, provide air cover in the event the Germans start trying to bomb us over there. We'll try and move some of these TAC air units east toward Bordeaux as well. I think at this point, a lot of it comes down to what's the situation for Vichy? They're 56% likelihood of joining the Axis, and I'm hoping the fall of Spain will make them much less likely, although Vichy being open to us would allow us to have another invasion route into southern France, and it would also massively expand the front line in Europe, so that we wouldn't be dealing with just being stuck sort of driving up a very narrow roadway. So we might consider it, if only because it really opens up a whole new path of advance, and Vichy should be relatively easy to take. I want a couple of turns. I probably want at least one more turn to get my troops reinforced and sort of to the border to see if that's something we would want to try. But it's something worth considering, I think. Because if we can overrun them quickly, then we could also probably overrun them relatively easily in North Africa. I assume Algeria is Vichy, although I'm not 100% sure if they are. I assume Tunis is as well. And it might even allow us to invade Italy from the north. We know they've got this sort of 3-fortification defensive line below Rome. If we can invade through Vichy, we could invade through northern Italy. And again, that would force them to pull maybe 10 or 12 more units off the Russian front. If I had more time, if Russia wasn't in such dire straits, then I would say no way in hell would I do this. But Russia is in dire straits. Okay. Reinforcing our air units in Britain. America still has a little bit of money left over, so we're going to go ahead and spend that on ground units. America has level 3 tanks now. We can't afford them, but we can afford a level 1 tank, and then we can just upgrade it when we build it. Maybe once we move into France, we can get more units that France can build up. I don't know. But that's the situation right now at the end of our September turn. Let's go ahead and save the game. I like alternating saves, just in case something happens. Corrupt file or something. The troops in Bordeaux are dug in at level 3. I don't want to attack them yet. We can probably force a 2-front. If they don't move any troops to the east here at Bordeaux, we can move this unit to the east. Then we can have 2 units attacking Bordeaux. But we'll see. I've moved some of my TAC air up in range. The British armor needs 2 turns to reinforce and then also upgrade. The American armor has been ordered. If we actually look at the production line here for the British, there's not much coming. But the Americans have tanks coming in January of 43. I think those are the ones we just bought. And we've got 2 armies coming in October. So next turn, we should have 2 American armies arriving off the East Coast. We'll also have 2 escort carriers arriving. We could potentially use those in the war against the U-boats, which is very important for our economy for the British, which is, again, important for us overthrowing Germany. But may also be more useful against the Japanese in the short term. I'm not sure. I'm pretty optimistic about the situation against the Japanese. Maybe I shouldn't be, but I think if we actually look at the reports here, we can see the Japanese do have 67 ground units, which is concerning. That's a lot of men. But again, remember, they're fighting against the Chinese. The Chinese still have 16 units, so that's, not 1-to-1. India has 14, so that's about 30 versus the 67. That's before you even include the couple of American units operating there, the handful of British units operating there. And I think the important thing is a huge number of Japanese troops are stuck in China. And so as long as they're stuck in China, they're not doing other things. And so, we could move across the Pacific Ocean and not have to deal with most of the Japanese army. They don't have a ton of air units. They only have 12. Granted, the Allies don't have a ton either. The Americans only have 3, and the how is that true? 3 air units, really? But that's also not really true, because the Americans have like 5 carriers that each have effectively 2 air units on each. So we'll have to see how that all works out. But yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Yeah, no off. Sounds like Market Garden. Just a little bit. Narrow road, not many troops. All right, I'm having some issues with my mouse, guys, so I'm going to have to call this quits. I'm sorry that it's a pretty abbreviated stream, only about 40 minutes, but I still hope that you guys enjoyed the episode as we kind of move forward further in this game. I'll try and play this again tomorrow night, either that or War in the Pacific Turn, depending on if I get it from XTRG or not. He already sent me the replay, so we may look at that. But I need to figure out what's going on with my system. In the meantime, I hope you guys are enjoying this series. Please leave your thoughts down below. And until next time, this is the Historical Gamer saying, once again, thank you very much for watching. And until next time, I'm out. I say until next time so many times in all my videos. It's just repetitive. But whatever. I guess that's my lucky tick. Anyway, see you guys. Have a good one. I'm out.